Could the Shroud of Turin be the ultimate evidence of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection? We are going to have an amazing time today with Caspar. Caspar, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so delighted to be with you, Pastor Tom.
So this can be terrific. First time I've ever had you on the program, but I've known about you for years. I've met you many times, but I've knew about you way before I even met you. And this is really a delight. But with that, you're the co-author of The Shroud of Turin Speaks for Itself. You provide forensic, archaeological, and technological validation of Jesus' death and resurrection. You talk about 3D imaging, forensic analysis. And so what I'd like to do is explore how this ancient artifact, the Shroud of Turin, intersects history, science, and faith. So we're just going to start right here.
That's a great place to start. I actually had a physician friend back around 2001 who told me if science could ever prove the DNA samples, that show the parents' genes, there'd be no more shroud debate. Well, with all the modern communications we've got today, all the technologies available to us right now, there's certain information that still seems to travel way too slow. And so, because we're dealing with the prince of the air, but if the gospel accounts are true, the virgin birth, and I actually, the second book I wrote on the Shroud, Spiritual Encounters with the Shroud, my editor was one of the scientists on the Shroud team, the original team, Barry Schwartz. I brought this material forth, and it was actually after an interview I did with my mate L.A. Marzulli years ago, inspired me to do the second book. And so if the gospel accounts of the Virgin are indeed true, and I mean today we've got like these, let's just call them what they are. We've got some heretics in the pulpits saying things like, you don't have to believe in the virgin birth to be a Christian. Without the virgin birth, there's no Christianity. So, you're misleading lots of people there. But if the virgin birth is indeed true, then Jesus' DNA makeup, he wouldn't have a Y chromosome because he didn't have a human father after all. But he would have the two X chromosomes. So scientists have indeed confirmed this by taking the DNA samples of the Sudarium ovidiae, which is the handkerchief that the compassionate Roman soldiers put over his face when they took him off the cross. And then the DNA samples from the Shroud of Turin itself. So keeping in mind, if Jesus was born fully male, that would mean he'd have an SRY gene. But the researchers found the SRY gene, instead of being inserted in the Y chromosome, it was inserted in a location normally that you wouldn't find. It was discovered in the two X chromosomes, which were imparted by the Virgin Mary. Now, this was done as a team of scientists, Italian researchers, 1995. They actually set the standard for gender testing, DNA analysis, and the blood samples on the Shroud of Turin and the Olivia cloth. And so scientists discovered that the X chromosome is present, but there's no evidence of a Y chromosome. I mean, that's what you'd expect in a virgin birth. I mean, I think the entire world should be up in arms rejoicing over this, because it makes me very, very happy. We got physical proof for all the skeptics, unbelievers. I mean, unless there was another virgin that gave birth to a man that was crucified wearing a crown of thorns and pierced in his side and nails through his hands and his feet, 120 scourge marks, I mean, what more evidence do we really need here?
So as I look at the Shroud of Turin, I was raised Catholic, and I just always wrote it off.
Right.
And then I started finding it very interesting. A couple of years ago, I started looking more and more into it, and I'm going, wow, there is something to this. And it's very fascinating. And with all of your research, you are saying, no, this is real. This is legitimate. And there's no other explanation. I've seen some things that only make sense through the supernatural. There's nothing else that makes sense about it. With the research that's now been done, why do skeptics continue to challenge its authenticity?
We live in a corrupt, fallen world, and now that my editors passed away, I remember him confiding in me that there was certain people that benefited in the original shrouding test because they wanted to try to disprove and make people believe it was a medieval forgery, which it's obviously not. We've had massive amounts of evidence to prove that now. But it's just the shroud is like the most studied, analyzed artifact in the world, and it's just kind of like how the full moon, reflects the sunlight. And after years of research, it's just kind of like this is reflecting something really significant for us. It's releasing information that people need to know, especially in these prophetic times that we're in now. And things are certainly coming to a final climax, as you well know. You talk about it a lot as well. So I think because truly, the deep things of God are mysteries. I mean, you can get a test group of virgins together right now, and I can guarantee you, a year from now, you're not going to have another child be born. So, I mean, there's certain things science can't do, right? Even though they think they're little gods right now, a lot of them anyways, the transhumanist, psychopathic ones. But I mean, nobody can explain the parting of the Red Sea. I remember watching a program years ago where these scientists were trying to explain the crossing the Red Sea, that there was an underground bridge. And so the Israelites, basically covered, it was like the water just positive enough that they could splash through the other side. I'm going, well, that's an even greater miracle. That means the entire Egyptian army drowned in a couple of feet of water. How preposterous, So, and I mean, then how do you explain, for 500 witnesses that, saw the physical resurrected Christ afterwards, and only 120 decided to obey him. Wait here in Jerusalem, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit. Only 120 obey. I mean, it said some of them doubted. You're looking at the physical alive after he's been resurrected, and some still doubted. So that's just the world we live in. I mean, how can science explain feeding 5,000 people with a couple loaves of bread and fish, So there's a lot they don't understand, even though they think they do. And then we got this phenomenal thing going on with the Holy Fire, part of the Shroud, with the Eastern Orthodox Church that's been celebrated, like at least we know about the last 1,200 years. And that's pretty extraordinary too. How can anybody explain that one? This blue flame, it doesn't burn. Maybe it has something to do with the scorching of the imprints, but it's also people have said things like, well, why don't we have more information in the scriptures about the shroud then? I mean, it does talk about it, right? But if they were, very religious Jews at the time, right? They were doing everything they could to destroy the testimony. If they knew about the supernatural image on 1 or 2 microns of the cloth, what's the chances the Romans or the Jews would have come in and destroyed that evidence? So it had to kind of go secret for a while.
Very fascinating. So let's go here. Let's break down the evidence and see how it connects to both faith and science. And so we'll break that down, but let me ask you this first. Where is the Shroud of Turin now?
In Turin, Italy.
Okay.
In Turin. That's okay. It was owned by the Savoy family for a while, and then it was bequeathed to the Catholic Church because I guess the senior Savoy just felt his son was like a playboy, and he thought he's going to cut it up into little pieces and give as gifts to his friends. So he bequeathed the entire shroud. But I would just tell people straight off. Nobody's figured this actually how this has all come together, but all the arguments about like some medieval genius. I mean, that's all preposterous. I mean, it would have been easier for Leonardo da Vinci, who's one of my heroes, to have launched and designed the Hubble spacecraft more than he could have ever done the Shroud. So it's we got so many mysteries. We got the pyramids. We got all that sort of stuff. But there's some people don't understand. They don't understand Stonehenge. They don't understand Easter Island, right? They don't understand the crop circles, the UFO phenomena that are happening. And yet here's in the middle of it all, we got the Shroud. So it's back in 1855 when an Italian lawyer who fancied himself an amateur photographer, was the first person to take photographs of the shroud. I think it was, no, actually, I think it was 1898 when he did that. And so he's in the dark room and he's developing and I remember when I was in art school, we used to have to learn how to do photography. I was a visual artist, painting, oil painting and all, but I had to learn that. And it was amazing. Go in with a piece of paper, put in some chemicals, and an image comes up. So here he does this, and he realizes the negative is a positive. It's the first person to see the face of Jesus, the whole body, in over 2,000 years. So it's been really extraordinary.
So how do modern scientific methods confirm the shroud's authenticity?
Well, there was one of the things I think was really fascinating, and I know I wrote about that in the 3D imaging. There was NASA at I think it was Pete Schumacher, who I've met as well, had they developed a way to take pictures of the dark side of the moon. And then somebody got the idea, like, let's put the shroud under there, see what happens. And all of a sudden they realized that it caused a 3D image, like there's a body wrapped around it. And you can't do that with anything else. So, I mean, right there, it's pretty phenomenal that showed.
No kidding. With that, so what role would you say historical documentation plays in verifying it?
Well, you've got a history, a trail we can run down, and like maybe in Odessa around 525, there's this ancient legend how King Abgar, who was it was a city 400 miles from Jerusalem at the time in ancient Syria. He's dying of leprosy. It's probably today's bioweapon, and just nudge, nudge. But the account tells us that the Lord Jesus has already gone to the cross at this point, and so he's calling for Jesus. Well, if Jesus of Nazareth only come, he would heal me. And so they send one of Jesus's disciples, and he comes and he looks at the shroud and he's healed. He brings him the shroud. So that's a pretty extraordinary story. It goes kind of like there's places where we don't know where it's been. We have no idea. We think we know. But then again, the trail picks up around 1509. And there was they'd kept it in a requiem in a silver container. There was, and by the way, the shroud had been in 2 fires. I mean, the enemy has tried to destroy it several times. So it was in this casket kind of thing on they were able to save it. That's one of the other reasons that the damage that was done, the nuns in the medieval times had sewed on some backing that preserve it. So when they did the first analysis, and they were supposed to take 3 samples, they got permission to take 3 samples from the shroud. And they took 1 sample and cut it up into 3 pieces. And they took it from the very worst possible place they could have ever handled it. It was a place that people would have held it up to display it. So it was already contaminated at that point. And they cut those up into 3 labs and said, oh, well, it's a medieval forgery. No, it wasn't the part you cut off was a medieval forgery. So it's interesting. Then it kind of in 1532, there was another fire that seriously damaged the fittings. It kind of dripped some silver onto it. That's why you see that it looks like kind of poles on there. The shroud was folded inside, except for being scorched. Some of the drops of molten silver fell on one corner. I think it was like 1534. There's a chamber. The nuns repaired the shroud then, and I think this is about the time it was returned to the Savoy Castle in Cambrai. So, but then again, we had NASA, VP8 image analyzing, and that's so extraordinary when you look at what Pete Schumacher did as a technician. This 3D topographical image shows a very clear image of a man in 3 dimensions, suspended, so like a horizon, it was a point where he was maybe in between dimensions at the moment of resurrection.
So it can be effectively shown to be from the time of Christ. You can take it all the way back to that time. And I've seen a lot of things on it where it can certain things can only be explained through the supernatural. There's no, from what I understand, there's no technology even today that could create what's on the Shroud of Turin and how it appears. So it's really miraculous. It can only be explained by the hand of God. So I want to come back to that, but let me ask you this: how how did your near-death experience shape your understanding of miracles, and maybe even of this research that you've done?
Well, I think this started for me. I was an art student, and I was over someone's flat, and they had a poster of the Shroud. I'm like, what is that? It's like, it was real nonchalant. I was like, oh, it's the image of Jesus, the real image. It's like, well, what do you mean the real image of Jesus? So that was in the 70s, and I was so fascinated. I just started researching it ever since then. In my own personal experience, I was playing with some well-known band. I prefer to keep them nameless at the moment, but I'm in front of 10,000 people just rocking out for Jesus. And I walked off stage, and I think it was like 97, and I ended up in the ER, and they said, well, you're going to die from an incurable heart disease. And now I know when I hear the word incurable, that's preposterous, because there's nothing incurable with God. All things are possible with him. So it set me on a journey and do some more research. And I used to hang out in Wales when people come to visit in UK, and there was a castle called Conway Castle in Wales, and it was an old ruin. I used to like to go there. Just sort of the thing we did when we were young, hang out at castles. And I discovered a story where a little boy named Roger fell off the castle wall, and he was pronounced dead, and they found him in the morning. And they had, instead of corners, they called them crowners back then. It was the Middle Ages. And I think it was maybe 1300s, actually. And so this man, I think his name is John Wyman, came along, a Christian man, and said, come on, pray for the boy. And they said, you can do whatever you want with him. He's dead. So he prays, and the little boy comes back on to life. And within a short time, he's up and playing like nothing had happened except for a little scratch on his face. And I'm going like, that's just amazing. And then at the same time, a friend named Seth Barnes, who's the head of AIM, Adventures in Mission, and he sent me a story about a couple of missionaries. He had an American missionary guy and an African missionary. And he said, like, in Africa, you go to Bible school, all you have is what, you're wearing. You don't have any, the luxuries they have in, like, America. And so either you believe the word or you don't believe the word. So they're going around on a mission trip, and they come across a village where a young woman named Rosa had passed away. She was in her 20s. And so the villagers, honored them to pray. And so the American pastor said, well, yeah, I'll pray for a dead woman. But, if she doesn't come back in a couple of minutes, then God's not in it. And the African pastor said, no, well, the word of God says, we can raise the dead. So he just kept praying. Hours and hours and hours later, the dead woman came back, and the entire village got saved.
Oh, this is amazing when you just hear about these kind of things. I happen to be someone that still believes in miracles, and you've mentioned the Shroud of Turin is the receipt of the sacrifice of Jesus, and rightly understanding it can help deepen your faith. And but let me ask you this. Radiation and energy patterns suggest supernatural phenomena linked to the resurrection. You think of radiation and energy patterns. Some of the things I've seen online about that, you go, it's remarkable.
It's something happened at that moment that scorched the image on 1 or 2 microns of the fiber. And that's something that it's still a mystery. But we think, we have some ideas how it might have happened. Again, the whole linen, think about the linen covered his entire body, the frontal and the dorsal. Mm-hmm. So, and so you got the front and the back. You got the complete, shape here. It's 14 feet long, like 3 feet wide, and there's this very faint monochromatic image of the man. It's been proven scientifically that, there's no special lights filters designed to catch even the smallest hint of any pigment. My friend Barry Schwartz was a master of the photography. He did many, they ran every test. When they went over examined it the first time, he thought we're going to have a great weekend, in Italy. It'll be a great holiday. We'll disprove this thing in an hour or 2 hours, and then we'll go on and, enjoy it. They worked 24 hours a day for 7 days a week, trying to come up with answers, and it brought in every machine available for technology. So no matter how close they look, the image remains a complete mystery. There's no marks of a brush. There's no signs of any liquid. We know the blood stain was there before the image came. And basically, it's like it is like a receipt. That's what we like to say. My friend Russ Brill at first coined the idea, because if somebody questions, did I really do this for you? Did I really die for the sins of the world? Show them this. And like, what do you do with the receipt if you buy a home, an airplane, a yacht? You put that receipt in a safe place, and sometimes you might want to bring it out for some purpose to show somebody that there's a proof of purchase, right? Every time you buy anything, you get an itemized list of what you paid for. And here's the Lord going, yeah, I paid for it all. I paid in full.
Amen. And from what I understand, also the time that it would have taken, it would have been like a millionth of a second or something like that with the radiation or whatever it was, in order for it to develop into the Shroud of Turin, what we see today with the image, for it to still be here. There's nothing that we have that could have possibly created that. Nothing that's known.
Nothing at all. No, nothing at all. I mean, it's one of those amazing mysteries, the Lord obviously could have done it differently for us, but this is the way he designed it. But it's just extraordinary. I mean, there's no chemical vapors. There's no burn on the linen in that sense. I mean, and I think there's been many peer-reviewed journals, analyzing this. You could take a razor blade and scrape the image off. I mean, it's just like, again, it's like 1 or 2 microns on the fiber, which is the same herringbone fiber that Joseph of Arimathea would have had. A wealthy man would have had a burial cloth like this. So I think this is, just an extraordinary. I don't know why the church doesn't talk about it more, except the fact I think a lot of them think it's some Catholic relic.
Well, and that's what I thought. I just thought it's just something that was made up, and because there's a lot of those things that are out there. But now with the advancement in technology, AI technology, and other things, do you see even more evidence to prove that this is legitimate coming on the horizon?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when a person undergoes extreme physical trauma for many hours, as the Lord Jesus Christ of Nazareth endured, things like your liver breaks down, it floods the body with a chemical called bilirubin, and the bilirubin acts like a permanent red dye. So if a man's beaten and he's tortured for a long period of time before ending his life, his blood would have stayed red, on that piece of cloth. And that's exactly, some of the details that have been proven here. He was in a place of shock. And then there's high levels of human hemoglobin and albumin in there. So again, the people realize this man was wrapped in linen, and he's blood soaked, and the Jews wouldn't have touched the blood, right? I mean, the bloody handkerchief, they're just going to put it all back together here, and uh, there's all the, the 120 scourge marks that have been found. I mean, the fact that you can see, because of the way the designs of the blood that have been analyzed, he was hanging from a cross. And by the way, while we're there, so as an artist, I mean, in my profession, many people misrepresented the crucifixion for years in artwork, and they'll have the nail in the palm, but it actually went through this thing called Destin's Point. You can, if you do your wrist right here, there's a little point right there. So now the Romans that crucified, I mean, that's their job. They were experts. They did this all day long, right? And so it would cause excruciating pain, the nail through here. If you put a body through the palm, the weight of the man would just rip off. But through here, this bone, it would cause excruciating pain through the medium nerve. And at that point, it would cause the thumb to go behind your hand, just automatically, because of the hitting the nerve that way, which is why you don't see any thumbs on the shroud. Which is, no medieval artist would know to do something like that.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so that's another, significant factor for me personally, looking at that. And it's just, there's just so much amazing information here for anybody that looks at it. I try to cover most of that in the Spiritual Encounters with the Shroud, which I felt like, because how Ali al-Marzuli is, he asked every difficult question he could possibly come up with. And so I did my very best to answer each one.
In your book, how can people get a hold of that book?
You can go to theupperroomfellowship.org, and there's a section for my books, and you can probably just find it on Amazon as well, on the Beast system.
And the link for Caspar is there in the description, as you guys can see it. With that, you've done a lot of work with L.A. Marzulli. What's connected the two of you?
I was talking about the UFO phenomena, the Nephilim, before I met him, and then somebody introduced us, and I started working with him and doing research. I've been writing for his magazine since he started it, and we've gone on some minor expeditions together, Nephilim hunting. I've lost track of how many conferences we've actually did together over the years. I got to a point where I felt like I could walk up and do his presentation for him. So.
With the Shroud of Turin, you've also talked about, was it numismatic evidence? And what is that? And you point to that as being significant.
Well, like the DNA evidence, it's the final pieces of the puzzle, really. I think most people don't realize that, as science gets better, I mean, real science, not Fauciides science, actual science. But the Shroud looks more and more advanced, not less. So it's like the message that's left for us, once we're smart enough, once we're clever enough to understand what he left for us. It's this actual burial cloth of a man that did the impossible and conquered death. And I think if we understood the Passover, we'd automatically understand the Shroud of Turin.
Mm-hmm. So as we think of that, it's a great connection with Passover, just thinking of it, and the lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world. Why do you think it's so significant, and why do you think it's really coming out just over the last couple of years that this is real? The Shroud of Turin is not some just fake artifact or something like that. It's legitimate. Why do you think this is happening now?
I think because we are so close to the edge, prophetically speaking, I think this year could be really significant. As you've been exposing these things for a long time while watching your program, and we're getting so close to the technology, like Larry Ellison going, well, everybody will be on their best behavior because we're surveilling everything. And his son's, taking over the film industry. I think he just bought up Warner Brothers and Paramount, and they're going to control the narrative. The former Prime Minister Tony Blair just about prostrates himself at the World Council when Larry Ellison walks on and goes, this man has transcended reality. So we are at a place where they can implement this sort of thing, just exactly what we see it with the mark of the beast technology, and so I think that's why I think we're really close to that. I think we're very, very close to that reality now.
I find it really fascinating when I think of the things that have been that God has allowed people to discover just over the last few years. I don't think it's a coincidence. I look at archaeology quite a bit, and there's so much archaeology that is uncovered in Israel that you can't deny the Bible is true anymore. And
Right.
I would even go so far as you start taking the Shroud of Turin, and I think there's other things that are going to be brought to our attention. Maybe there'll be more out there regarding Noah's Ark. I keep seeing things that are very interesting, but you look at this, you go, wait a minute, in a world that is full of fakes, with AI videos and so many real fake news, what's happening now with, for example, archaeology, or I would even put the Shroud of Turin in there, maybe Noah's Ark in there, you can see things and touch them. And why is it all happening right now? In a world that is full of fakes, we can touch it. We can know these things aren't fakes. And what you're describing and what you describe in your book is the technology that's out there, science and technology that is showing there's no other explanation for this. It's the only thing it can be. We can't even recreate this today the way it was done. It's impossible. And so we're watching this, and I think I agree. It's like God is just telling the world, hey, this is what's really going on. Pay attention. My word is true. Jesus really did come to seek and save those that are lost. Really is the Lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world, which I think the Shroud of Turin speaks volumes to. Caspar, can I ask you one more question before we wrap up?
Of course.
Real briefly, I want to have you back on, do a full program for this. Your testimony. You're a musician. How did you come to Christ, and a little bit about your music too?
I have a friend named Phil Keggy, who's in the Christian music world, and Phil was the manager, saw me play, and Phil loved the band and came up to me and said, we had like a cigar, and sign here, kid, and make you a star. One of my friends introduced me to the Keggies, and that was the first time anybody actually sat down and shared the gospel with me. It took me a little bit of time. We're still really close friends. Like, he's my older brother. So everything I learned pretty much about doing music ministry, I've learned, being with Phil, because we've been together for well over 50 years or more, maybe 60 now, and done concerts together and that sort of thing. I was on a major label. Got to play with some wonderful musicians. My friend Rick Derringer and I recorded a song called Freedom. And unfortunately, Rick passed away just like a month before it came out last year. And I've got to play with my friend Tommy James and the Shondells. And Tommy always introduces me as, the pastor on lead guitar. And then I get to minister to people I probably never get to minister to otherwise. So I've seen it as a great opportunity to share the gospel.
Tommy James and the Shondells, if I remember right, one of his very famous songs was Crystal Blue Persuasion. Wasn't that him?
Yes, that was, and he wrote it out of Revelation.
Really?
He was reading Revelation when he wrote that song.
Well, I never knew that. I've told my friend, I have a friend I've known since I was 4 years old, known him a long time, over 60 years old. That was his favorite song when we were growing up in the 60s. When we were little kids. And then you mentioned Rick Derringer.
Right.
Did he? Do you know if he came to Christ?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I was working with them. Tommy and Rick, both strong Christians.
Oh, I never knew that about Rick Derringer.
Yeah, Rick had became a very strong believer. Rick would actually come and visit me almost every year for a week or two and stay. And I remember we're getting some hay for my horse, and one of my neighbors came up and said, "That guy looks just like Rick Derringer in your car." And I looked at Rick and I said, "She thinks you look like Rick Derringer." And I laughed, and I went, I don't see it. So,
Yeah.
but we were kind of like joking on like that. But Rick had asked me to join his band, when we first met in the 70s, and then we just went different ways and ended up getting back together again as believers. So just he was like family to me.
Wow. Praise
And
the Lord. And you still do music. And people can.
this
Yeah.
weekend, Stay Awake America, will be in Port St. Lucie, Florida, with Tommy Robinson and um, Kevin Sorbo is going to be speaking with us, and the actor friend of mine,
Yeah.
and Dr. Judy Mikovich, I think, still there, and just amazing, line of speakers, and the bands, the Caspar McCloud band will be playing the Stay Awake America song. General Flynn will be with us. We started this with General Flynn.
Wow, that is great. Yeah, Tommy Robinson's going to be there, and Kevin Sorbo. That is, and Florida's a pretty nice place too. That's what I've discovered. Caspar, it is great having you on the program today. Look forward to having you back where we can talk some more. Look forward to seeing you. I know we'll run into each other again.
I'm looking forward to it.
Soon enough, but it was really a delight having you on. And I want to thank you for your encouragement, for being a blessing, and being about our Father's work. And thank you for using the gifts that God has given you. The mind for the things like the Shroud of Turin, and the ability to play your music for the kingdom of the Lord. Thank you so much. Any final things you want to share with everyone?
I was just thinking, I got to play at the 50th anniversary of Woodstock as a Christian artist, and they asked me to speak on Sunday morning after we played. I was actually the only artist that's played twice at this thing. And so I walked on and I told them about the story of Nicodemus. Because in LA, Marzulli called me the night before and said, whatever you do, don't speak Christianese. It's a secular audience, So I said, so there was this well-respected man about town doing all the best things so conservatively. His name was Nicodemus. He sneaks in to see Jesus at night, and Jesus just cuts the chase because you got to get born again. Nicodemus is this established rabbi, and he can't comprehend, how can I be born the second time out of my mom, And the Lord basically goes, look, you don't know where the wind comes from, you don't know where it goes, and you're like the most educated guy here. So how can I talk to you about string theory and quantum physics? Anyways, but I didn't know how far I can go, but at the end, I did a little, salvation prayer at the end. When I got saved, I prayed like this, and to my amazement, people were praying along. I all these celebrities and people there that hugged me afterwards, thanking me for sharing Jesus. We just all need Jesus.
That is so cool. That is great. I can't wait to see you again, have you back on, but run into you in one of our places that we will be together. It was great. And please say hi to LA next time you see him too.
And I've got to have you on our show too, Spiritual Encounters. I'll have Penny arrange something for you.
That would be great. I would love to. That'd be terrific. All right. God bless you, Caspar. Thank you for joining me. Make sure that you go to Caspar's website. You can see the link in the description. God bless you, everybody. And talk to you next time.